The forest clearing was a perfect circle carved out of the tall pines, their trunks standing like pillars of an ancient cathedral. The ground was a patchwork of soft grass, dry pine needles, and the faint remnants of last autumn's leaves. A small campfire crackled in the center, its smoke curling lazily upward, catching the last amber light of the day. The scent of wood smoke mingled with the resin-rich aroma of pine, making the air smell warm and wild. 6 campers, all dusty and sun-kissed from the day's hike, sat in a loose ring around the fire. Boots were unlaced, socks steaming faintly from the heat, and mugs of coffee or cocoa were cupped between tired hands. Someone had skewered sausages over the flames, their skins blistering and popping with fat. A guitar rested on a log nearby, its owner telling a story instead of playing, the kind of winding, half-true trail tale that drew quiet laughs from the group. Above them, the sky was deepening into a gradient of gold, then rose, then a violet so soft it felt painted on. A breeze stirred the treetops, carrying the distant rush of a mountain stream. Fireflies began to wink on at the clearing's edges, tiny pulses of light in the darkening brush. The forest felt alive but calm, each sound distinct yet harmonious. The pop of the fire, the rustle of leaves, the faint hoot of an owl far away. The group had no reason to think this was anything but a safe, serene night. Their tents were pitched just beyond the ring of trees, gear neatly stacked, lanterns ready for later. It was the kind of evening where the only concern was whether there was enough chocolate for another round of s'mores. But under the soft symphony of forest sounds, something else was moving. A small, watchful presence at the fringe of the firelight. Its eyes caught the glow, round and alert, ears swiveling at every shift of the wind. Soon, it would step into the circle, bringing with it an urgency that would change the night completely. The first hint that something had shifted came not from the sky, but from the brush at the far edge of the clearing. A faint rustle broke the rhythm of the evening's sounds. Not the random scurry of a mouse or the light flutter of an insect, but the deliberate parting of stems and leaves. Heads turned instinctively toward the sound, and into the fire's soft halo of light stepped a small, mottled gray rabbit. Its fur caught the glow in silvery flecks, blending with the shadows at its back. The campers froze mid-conversation, their laughter fading into curiosity. Rabbits weren't uncommon in these woods, but this one's arrival felt strangely deliberate. It didn't nibble at the grass or glance toward the discarded food wrappers near the fire. Instead, it stood tall on its haunches, ears erect and swiveling in small, precise movements, as if mapping every sound within 100 yards. The animal's nose twitched rapidly, drinking in the scents that humans couldn't detect. Its eyes, dark and glassy, scanned the circle of firelight and beyond, past the campers, past the tents, toward the invisible line where the forest thickened into shadow. The group waited for it to bolt at their presence, but it didn't. Instead, the rabbit took a measured hop forward, stopping just inside the open clearing. Its posture remained stiff, almost statuesque, as though it had paused mid-decision. The firelight deepened the hollows in its fur, making it appear both delicate and tense at once. For a moment, it was as though the animal had arrived to observe them, rather than the other way around. The campers exchanged glances, quietly intrigued, but none moved to shoo it away. There was something in the way it stood, a tautness that didn't belong to a creature seeking food or shelter. It was the stance of an animal that had heard something, or felt it. Soon, they would understand that this little intruder hadn't wandered in at random. It had come with a message, and it would deliver that warning in the only language it knew, one that would be impossible to ignore. The stillness in the clearing stretched taut, as if the forest itself were leaning in to listen. Then, without any obvious trigger, the rabbit dropped low, its belly nearly brushing the pine needle-strewn ground, and slammed its powerful hind legs into the earth. Thump, thump, thump. The sound was shockingly loud in the quiet. It wasn't the light patter of a startled hop. It was a deliberate, hard drumming that seemed to echo in the soil beneath the campers' boots. The group exchanged uneasy looks. One of them half whispered, "What's it doing?" but no one answered. The rabbit paused, ears stiff as arrows, eyes locked on some point beyond the firelight. Then it struck again, faster this time. Thump, 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 thump. Each strike vibrated faintly through the clearing, a primal percussion older than any human warning cry. A few of the campers instinctively glanced around, scanning the darkening tree line for movement, but saw nothing but still trunks and dense shadow. One camper, a woman with years of trail experience, frowned. "That's not random," she murmured, almost to herself. "They do that when they sense danger." Still, the rabbit continued. 3 sharp thumps, a pause, then 3 more. The same rhythm again and again, a code hammered into the ground. It was so focused, so intent, that it seemed to have forgotten the humans entirely. And then came the moment that would settle in the back of every camper's mind. The forest around them seemed to listen too. Somewhere far off, an answering rumble rolled through the air, low and drawn out. It might have been thunder, or it might have been something else entirely. The rabbit's body stiffened further, its thumping quickening, the urgency in every strike making it impossible to dismiss as coincidence. At first, the change was so subtle it felt like imagination, a faint tightening of the space around them, as though the clearing had drawn its breath and decided not to let it go. The crackle of the campfire seemed louder in the hush, each pop of resin sharp against a sudden absence of breeze. One by one, the campers became aware of it, the air pressing heavier against their skin, damp with a strange weight that clung to their arms and the backs of their necks. Someone swallowed, then licked their lips with a faint grimace. "Do you taste that?" she asked, but didn't wait for an answer. It was there, a metallic tang, faint but distinct, the kind that prickled the edges of the tongue and set the teeth slightly on edge. Overhead, the violet twilight was fading faster than it should, its edges darkening into an inky blue that swallowed the last streaks of gold. The treetops no longer swayed. Every branch held perfectly still, like a painting. Even the usual rustle of small night creatures seemed to have vanished, replaced by a thick, waiting quiet. The rabbit, still close to the clearing's edge, froze mid-thump. Its ears pivoted sharply toward the distant hills, then flattened tight against its back. The stillness lasted only a second before it resumed. Thump, 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 thump. Faster, harder now, as though trying to pound urgency into the soil. Somewhere far away, a deep rumble rolled through the forest. It wasn't sharp or immediate like a branch snapping. It was drawn out, resonant, swelling in the chest like the bass of a distant drum. It could have been thunder, or the groan of something vast shifting in the earth. A flicker of unease passed through the group. They didn't yet feel fear, but they felt the first tendrils of doubt, the small, insistent voice that said something is not right. And in the center of that creeping wrongness stood the rabbit, a tiny sentinel, its warning written in every strike of its hind legs. The rabbit's drumming grew almost frantic now, each thump a sharp jolt through the soil, its rhythm quickening into a pounding heartbeat for the clearing. The animal's body seemed all sinew and tension, ready to spring, eyes wide with a kind of fixed, unblinking alarm. One of the campers, the oldest in the group, a wiry man with sun-leathered skin and the kind of eyes that missed nothing, was the first to act. He rose slowly, scanning the tree line, then the sky, then the animal. "Pack up," he said flatly. The others blinked at him, confused. "It's just a rabbit," someone started, but he cut them off with a shake of his head. That's not fear of a fox or hawk. That's something bigger and closer." He nodded toward the rabbit, which had stopped thumping only to bolt several yards toward the forest path, then halt again, turning back to deliver one last volley of heavy strikes into the earth. The sound reverberated like a drumbeat, meant to break hesitation. A ripple of unease passed through the group. They began moving in quick, jerky motions, dousing the fire with a splash from a water bottle, sweeping their scattered mugs and utensils into packs, snuffing lanterns. The forest around them felt unnervingly still, every motion loud in the quiet, the zip of a tent flap, the clink of a carabiner, the rasp of nylon straps. The rabbit vanished into the shadows ahead, and without fully realizing it, they fell in behind it, not chasing, but following. their boots pressing into the soft loam of the narrow trail. And then came the first true sign, a sudden electric prickling across their arms and the backs of their necks, as though the air itself had turned to static. Someone muttered, "Hare's standing up!" That was when the oldest camper spoke again, more sharply this time. "Move, now!" They had barely made it 30 yards into the cover of the trees when the forest behind them erupted in light and sound. It began with a blinding flash, a split-second sheet of white-hot brilliance that turned every branch, every pine needle, into a silhouette carved from fire. The light poured through the forest like liquid, flooding their vision, bleaching the world to a stark, impossible brightness. Then came the sound. It wasn't the sharp crack of a branch or the boom of distant thunder. It was a detonation, a sky-splitting roar that shook the ground under their boots and punched the air from their lungs. The concussion reverberated through their ribs, leaving their ears ringing with a high, metallic hiss. Somewhere in the clearing, the lightning had found its mark. A tall pine, the one closest to their abandoned fire pit, exploded in a violent shower of wood and bark, shards spinning through the air like shrapnel. The scent hit them next, a choking electric tang of ozone mingled with the rich, almost sweet smell of burning sap. Wisps of smoke coiled upward, instantly lost in the wind that followed the strike. The campers crouched instinctively, hearts pounding, chests heaving. One turned to glance back and caught sight of the clearing through a lattice of branches, a jagged spear of blackened wood still smoldering in the earth, steam rising from where rain-wet soil met heat so fierce it had turned the ground pale. The oldest camper's voice was low but steady, just audible over the fading rumble. "That's where we were sitting." His eyes were fixed on the place they'd left minutes, maybe seconds, before. None of them spoke for a long moment. The truth was heavy in the air. Without that strange, insistent warning from a small gray rabbit, they would have been sitting in the center of that strike zone when the sky came down. The storm rolled on, the sky pulsing with distant flashes, each one followed by a softened rumble. The campers stood in the shelter of the trees, still breathing hard, their packs slung over their shoulders, now not out of preparation but necessity. Rain began to fall. Not a gentle mist, but heavy, slanting sheets that hissed through the pine needles overhead. They waited until the initial shock faded and their ears stopped ringing before anyone spoke. The youngest camper finally broke the silence. "It knew," she said softly, almost as if speaking too loudly would undo their luck. Her eyes were still on the clearing, barely visible through the rain and smoke. The oldest camper didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked along the path they had taken, a narrow thread of dark soil winding deeper into the woods. Somewhere ahead, beyond the range of their lantern light, the rabbit was gone. No tracks, no rustle of brush, no final glance back. It had done what it came to do and vanished into the storm. They moved on, deciding to set camp farther up the ridge, away from the strike site. As they walked, the lightning strike played over in their minds. The heat, the blast, the sheer violence of it. It was impossible not to replay the minutes before. The odd stillness, the heavy air, and above all, the relentless pounding of those hind legs against the ground. Hours later, when they were finally under their new shelter, rain drumming on taut nylon, the talk returned to the rabbit. They called it the Sentinel, half jokingly at first, but the name stuck. Some said it was just an animal's natural instinct. Others claimed it was something stranger, a force in the wild that didn't need human words to warn of danger. In the morning, when they passed near the original clearing, they didn't linger. The scorched tree still stood like a jagged black spear in the earth, the soil around it cratered and pale. Not a sound came from the place, but in their minds, they could still hear it. Thump, thump, thump. The urgent call that had pulled them from their circle of firelight moments before the sky itself came down. And none of them, not even the skeptics, would ever again ignore a rabbit's warning.